Good morning, boys. We begin the final term with the chapter The Laburnum. Now, this is a poem and it is on page 88 of your textbooks. So, the poem Laburnum is about the laburnum tree which blooms in summer. This tree is also called the golden shower tree because of its golden yellow flowers. When this tree is bare, it is an ordinary tree and not something that catches someone's attention. But when its brilliant golden flowers bloom, they add up color to the otherwise dry, hot summer. The flowers are so dazzling that they brighten up the dull, stormy days and give pleasure to all passers. The poem The Laburnum is written by Mira Oberoi, who was born in 1952 and died in the year 2012. She was one of India's best known writers for children. Her books include the Mahabharata tales from the Panchatantra, Puffin Book of Classic Indian Tales. She had an innate talent of telling ancient tales in a contemporary style. She was also a painter and a passionate gardener. Now, let us begin the poem The Laburnum. So, let us look at it verse by verse. So, in front of you, the picture is of a laburnum tree. Now, the first verse. Just down the road from where I live, a lone laburnum grows. It does not advertise itself, unlike the cawing crows. So, what is the poet trying to tell us in the first verse? She is telling us the laburnum tree, which is an ordinary tree, stands alone in the corner of the neighborhood where the poet lives. The tree is not noticeable as there is nothing special in it. Now you look at the picture, you can see there's nothing special about the tree, nothing so noteworthy, nothing which we would notice, nothing remarkable. So now she is telling us that it is very unlike the crows because the laburnum tree stands quietly. It is the tree with its silence appears unlike the crows that like to caw and make a lot of noise. It stands quiet and remains unnoticed. So, what is the poet telling us? The poet is telling us that the laburnum tree stands very quiet and unnoticed, unlike the crows who caw the whole day and make a lot of noise, and we are bound to look and notice at them because sometimes they are rather irritating. So, you can see that tree there, and in that verse there is a line which says it does not advertise itself. What is the meaning of advertise itself? It does not make itself noticeable. Yes, so it does not have any such things which makes it noticeable, no show. Okay, now we go to the next verse. But like the cawing crows, you'd say, there's nothing to this tree. Its height is unremarkable, its leaves so ordinary. So, what is she saying? Now, she's saying, yet in another way, we can compare the tree to the crows. How? Because as the crow is an ordinary bird, and we would not look at it twice because it is very ordinary, it's not special. In the same way, the tree too is very ordinary. Now, its height is unremarkable. That means it does not have such a height that we would look at it. Height is very average. You can see that tree there. It's not a very tall tree. So it isn't having a remarkable height that we would look up to it in amazement. So, just like the crows, which are very ordinary birds, and we won't want to look at it over and over again, it is something very common. And again, she is saying its leaves, so ordinary. And again, she says the leaves of the laburnum tree are very ordinary. So, there's nothing at all remarkable that we would notice the tree. Now, we go on to the next verse. Now, what is there in the next verse? But come the summer, golden light wrapped within the tree. In May, the crystallized sunbeams burst out for all to see. Now, all this time we had seen that the tree was an ordinary tree and we would not notice it. It was not noticeable. But the poet says, when summer comes, the tree starts changing because flowers begin to bloom. Now you look at the picture there. The tree is now having a few flowers. As summer sets in, the tree begins to bloom with bright yellow flowers, and therefore everyone will begin to notice the tree now. Yes? Now see what happens when it is in May. The crystallized sunbeams burst out for all to see. And when the tree is in full bloom, this is how it looks. That ordinary tree we saw in the morning has now become a beautiful tree with beautiful yellow flowers. And how beautiful it looks! It looks really beautiful. And we would definitely notice a tree like this if we pass by it. Now it's no more that ordinary, unremarkable tree. Now, what does the poet mean by crystallized sunbeam? She means that the rays of the sun pass through the yellow flowers and they look even brighter. Okay, you can see the meaning out there. Crystallized sunbeams burst out. Here, the rays of the sun. So, now we see that this beautiful tree is in bloom. Now, let's go to the next verse. The thundery grey sky casts its gloom on everything in sight, but the little tree is quite untouched. It burns with topaz light. Now, what is the next verse telling us? That when there is thunder and rain, and the surroundings are grey and gloomy. What happens to this tree? Nothing happens. It remains untouched. It seems as bright as ever. Yes, even on a day which is so gloomy. So during heavy rains and thunder, when everything is dark, the tree seems untouched by the surrounding gloom, and instead it shines with topaz light. What does the poet mean by topaz light? It means it glows like the bright topaz. Topaz is a gemstone which is of a yellowish brown color. Thus, the poet is saying that the tree shines with yellowish glow of a gemstone, which would mean it is very bright, even in a dull, rainy day. Now, next we come to the next verse. Now, what is so? In the next verse, the poet says, flowers of sunshine cloak the tree and dazzle every eye, and every puff of a wayward breeze drops gold on passers by. So, what does the poet want to tell us? Now, you can see the flowers of the tree. You can see the flowers of the laburnum tree. Now, here the trees are bright yellow. The poet says that the dazzling yellow flowers attracts the attention of every passers-by, unlike the time when it had not bloomed and no one noticed it. And when it's windy, when there is breeze around, the breeze drops a yellow flower on each passerby. So, and with the breeze, the golden flowers drop on every passerby. So, can you see the tree? How beautiful it is looking. We will not stop noticing and admiring that tree. Yes, now very unlike the time in the beginning when the tree was not blooming. And what does the poet say in the next? And then the poet also says, flowers of sunshine cloak the tree. That means all these yellow flowers which are compared to the color of sunshine cloak the tree. That means cover the tree like a cloak. You know what's a cloak? A cloak is something people wear on top of their attire, and it covers their whole body and their entire attire. So, these flowers seem to be covering the entire tree like a cloak. So, now we go on to the next verse. Now, here you can see many of these trees blooming one after the other. The laburnum trees one after the other. And how beautiful they are looking. Look at those bright yellow flowers. They look awesome. Now, what is the last verse telling us? Even the beggar down the street smiles when he sees this tree, and for some moments he can feel a joy that comes for free. So the poet is saying, even the beggar who is otherwise assailed with so many troubles, smiles when he sees the tree. The tree brings a smile on the beggar's face, making him momentarily forget his sorrow. So at that time when he looks at the tree, for that moment he forgets all his sorrow and brings delight to him through this charming scene in front of him. The beggar feels so much joy for some moments, and this joy comes to him for free. This is something, this joy, the beggar or anyone else, here she's talking about the beggar who is always filled with troubles and problems, but still he too can feel the joy looking at this tree. And that joy does not come with a price. You do not have to pay money. The beggar needn't spend any money to be filled with joy looking at the tree because it is priceless. It cannot be bought by money. So that brings us to the end of this poem. Now, this poem describes the magic of the laburnum, and that brings around when the flower blooms. This joy the tree gives to the people around is priceless. And I would like to believe that the message of this poem by the poet is that all living beings have the potential to do something big. We all have infinite potential. Yes, even if we look ordinary, unnoticed, unremarkable, all living beings have within them the potential to become remarkable, just like the tree, which was unnoticed, unremarkable, very, very ordinary in the beginning. But once summer came, it became so remarkable that it spread joy to everyone, even the poor beggar. So that potential was already there in the tree. So that came out at the right time. So this is true for all of us. All of us should believe that we all have that infinite potential to do something so good that everyone will notice us. Yes, and we will become noticeable and we will be able to spread joy to everyone. So with that, I end today's lesson.